Tired of debating reef tank chemistry? Just want a solution that will not just work, but proven itself to produce some of the highest percentage pass to that dream tank? The BRStv Master Reef Tank Chemistry series is it, and all that's coming up. Hey, this is Ryan with BRStv. This week, the BRStv Chemistry Quick Guide. That first episode in our Master Reef Tank Chemistry mini-series. In the next few minutes, clear guidance on how to get major, minor, and trace elements, pH, temperature, salinity, and pollutants all solved. Today, the straightforward how to get it done right. Following episodes in future weeks, the why, or in-depth look at the supporting science, data, and experiences for a more complete understanding. Everything the BRS team and I have learned on reef tank chemistry. Part of that growing list of Master Your Reef Tank series found on the BRS channel page. The biggest challenge most of us reefers run into at some point is that perception that good is the enemy of great and resulting endless debate or pursuit of perfection when most of us are just looking for a clear, concise path that produces an awesome tank. The BRS Quick Guide's applying the 80-20 rule with the right approach and information. You can achieve 80% of the results with just 20% of the effort, that baseline of knowledge that will produce a successful reef tank. Reef tank chemistry covers a lot of topics, but in reefing, looks at how to produce high quality water, maintain that standard of quality in an environment where corals are constantly removing elements and we're dumping in pollutants daily, all combined with temperature and environmental factors like pH. Sounds like a lot to juggle, but it isn't. Getting straight to it, we recommend the following chemistry parameters: a salinity of 35 parts per thousand, pH of 7.8 to 8.3, temperature 78, calcium of 440, alkalinity of 9 DKH, and magnesium of 1350. Using trace element solutions that are difficult to mess up, and pollutant removal via a proactive approach that avoids issues rather than treats them after the fact. Get this right, and water chemistry will never be your issue. Starting with the foundation of all this, salinity, because lower or higher salinity will affect the concentration of nearly every element in the tank. Salinity being off by just 10%, the difference of over 40 points of calcium, or a full DKH, too high or low. The best guidance is mix the salt to the suggested level on the bucket that you picked up, because all of the elements in the bucket are formulated by the manufacturer to that level. Most often it will be 1.026 specific gravity or 35 parts per thousand, something you can check with a handheld or digital refractometer. We recommend synthetic salts like HW Reefer and Tropic Marin because they're cleaner salts, HW being the more affordable of the two and probably the highest value because of that. Tropic Marin, the high-end option, a bit more expensive, but using pharmaceutical grade salts, and of all the salts we tested, mixes the fastest, keeps the storage equipment the cleanest, and has the most stable chemistry in long-term storage for those who like to mix up a month's worth of salt water at a time. Since the chemistry or quality of the water will never be better than what you start with, we also recommend RODI water as a source of fresh water for mixing up that salt water or topping off to replace evaporation. A BRS 5-stage unit with dual universal carbon blocks being the 80-20 of the RODI world and meeting the needs of 80% of the reefers, but also upgradable if you ever run into a unique scenario where there's some added value from adding additional stages. Making RODI water at home just being the red line screwed onto your sink, laundry tub, or cold water line, black line down the drain or attached to it, and the blue line will produce your RODI water going straight to a reef storage bin. Most common is just a Rubbermaid Brute trash can. I'd recommend getting a container that's about 40% of the size of your tank so you can mix up a month's worth of water at a time if you like. The container should have some sort of pump in it to mix the salt. I suggest a Hydrocorellia, and with most salts we find 8 to 24 hours being the best mixing length. If you end up following our 10% weekly water change guidance, there's no need to heat it, but I would heat it for 24 hours beforehand if you're doing larger percentage water changes. Eheim making an inexpensive heater option if you need it. The tank will also evaporate water and will need to be topped off with fresh water. As that fresh water evaporates, the tank salinity will go up, so you do need to periodically top off the tank with fresh water to maintain stable chemistry. Most reefers will eventually automate that task with an auto top off, the JBJ ATO being the most common entry-level option, the Tunes Oscillator being by far the most trusted and popular option and what I use on all my own tanks. Next is replacing elements like calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium that the corals and other organisms in the tank consume. Nearly every reef tank manages this with one part, like kalkwasser or calcium formate, which manages calcium and alkalinity with a single liquid. 2 to 7 parts which manage these elements with separate bottles, or a calcium reactor, which is a piece of equipment which adds calcium and alkalinity for you. All of these have specialized uses where one can be considered best, but that all depends on things specific to you, like budget, space, tank size, coral types, and approach to water changes and other equipment choices. However, in the spirit of a productive quick guide conversation, I got one sentence on what I like about each option, what I don't like, and who I'd recommend each to. Starting with kalkwasser or calcium hydroxide is the lowest cost option for most reefers, raises the tank's pH significantly, doesn't raise salinity, it's inherently balanced, a one-part additive which is super easy to use in either an auto top-off or even better with a reactor and dosing pump for controlled doses. Downsides to calc are the risk of equipment failure related overdoses, which can cause high pH tank crashes, no minor or trace elements, concentration of solutions less predictable or stable than other options. Calcium and alkalinity solution is dilute, so you have to have a larger dosing vessel or reactor, and the amount you can dose is limited by the amount that your tank evaporates in a day. With those considerations in mind, I recommend kalkwasser to anyone whose major goal is raising the pH of the tank, also willing to use a pH controller to protect the tank, and wants to maintain a tank ranging from a softy LPS or mixed reef with SPS. Kalkwasser will take you a lot further than most people think. Next, calcium formate, most commonly Tropic Marin's carbocalcium or alpha reef. Benefits here are a one-part solution that adds calcium, alkalinity, and optionally 17 trace elements concentrated so the dosing vessel can be small, can be dosed by hand or with a single dosing pump, doesn't raise salinity, and doesn't have any pH-related risks. Downside is calcium formate doesn't elevate the pH like many options. Testing alkalinity is somewhat delayed because it can take up to a day or so for the formate to transform into carbon alkalinity in the tank. In theory, there's a maximum dose, but the biggest downside is reefers have only been using it for a few years, so there's still some unknowns as to exactly how it works. As to who I'd recommend it to, I've been using it on my softy and polyp tank as well as my LPS tank for a couple of years, and Zach on his mixed SPS reef for even longer, and both of us are very happy. I got a feeling that calcium formate, carbocalcium, or alpha reef might be one of the most popular options as the user base expands. However, the best results will be with the people who are willing to do a bit of research on how it works, our upcoming master formate video being more than adequate, but also with reefers who are okay with the risks associated with being a trailblazer, which in this case, I actually feel are fairly limited. Next is a calcium reactor. This is a fairly large piece of equipment that melts calcium carbonate, or actually in some cases old coral skeleton, into a solution for the tank. Essentially a one-part machine. Benefits are no change to salinity, does dose some other elements other than just calcium and alkalinity, scales to basically any tank size demand. Many reefers find them to be the lowest maintenance option of the bunch, and of course, a clear winner in the cool factor category as well. Downsides, a calcium reactor can lower the tank's pH a bit. The media can add a small amount of phosphate to the tank. Some people feel that they're complex, but really, they only require watching a 30-minute or so video on how to set it up and tune it. Rest is just managing a dose like any other method, which is pretty easy. The biggest downside is the cool factor actually comes at a cost. The upfront equipment makes it not the cheapest option out there, but the ongoing maintenance is actually one of the lower cost options and why they're popular on bigger tanks. So who's a calcium reactor best suited for? This one's pretty easy. Anyone with a large, high consumption tank will save money in the end and then avoid salinity issues from the other options which can also sustain a high consumption tank. And then technology junkies, we're learning about the tank, science, and cool gear is a major component of the hobby. Next up are the two parts, which can really be 3, 4, or even 7 parts in total, but 2 part just meaning the calcium and alkalinity portion being 2 separate bottles. Spoiler here, this is the one we're going to recommend today. Benefits include many raise the tank's pH, the calcium and alkalinity can be dosed independently and adjust for subtle differences in uptake. Many include all the beneficial major, minor, and trace elements. The solution is fairly concentrated, one of the easiest to understand, hardest to mess up. Equipment-related tank crashes are super rare. The available dosing calculators are super easy to use. Additions can be tested in real time, can be dosed by hand or with dosing pumps, and the upfront cost is fairly low. 2-part downsides, high-end options are actually the most expensive way to manage these elements. They slowly increase salinity over time. There's so many options out there, it's difficult to know what to use. True 2 parts are really simple, but the more bottles you get, the more complex the dosing testing gets, and automation requires multiple dosing pumps. This is why I believe 2-part to be the 80-20 answer to managing element uptake and replenishment. While the others have caveats and best uses, 2 parts are the universal additive that work well in at least 80% of the tank sizes, uptakes, and styles of reefing. It's easy to understand, implement, and adjust, and also has very affordable options. Affordable, works, and easy to use is like the recommendation trifecta. Likely why 2-part is by far the most popular option, BRS Pharma being the most popular option here, because the pharmaceutical quality and bulk prices are impossible to beat. The BRS WWC hybrid tank in my office is a good example of what bulk pharma 2-part can do in just 12 months, going from 1-inch frags to this in just over a year in a simple, simplest system. In the following Master Chemistry episodes, expect to see full rundowns and supporting science of all of these methods and their approach to major, minor, and trace elements. Next up is pH. Our recommendation on this is if you have a pH of 7.8 to 8.3, leave it alone. Decades of reefers have produced amazing reefs in that range. Too many reefers have catastrophically messed up the chemistry, chasing specific pH ranges to suggest otherwise. However, we're talking about mastering chemistry here, so it is true that maintaining a stable pH closer to 8.3 has benefits, so I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear later episodes in the series will dive deep into pH and show some methods of getting as much as 50% more growth by maintaining a specific pH. Next, temperature. Temperature plays some pretty complex roles in reef chemistry, but the 4 things you absolutely need to know is 78 degrees is the most common range. If you stay within a degree of that temperature, it will not be an issue for you. Second, going over 78 or too high is 10 times worse than too low. Most otherwise healthy tanks with adequate flow will tolerate short periods of a few degrees over 78, like 83 for a matter of hours, but after that, the odds of a rapid tank crash go up proportionally or even exponentially. In stark contrast to that, too cold happens very slow. The tank most often stabilizes a few degrees above room temperature at 73 or so, and rather than a tank crash, you'll see things go slowly south over a matter of days, even weeks rather than a total crash in a matter of hours. Third, an aquarium heater is a consumable piece of equipment that has a limited duty cycle and a lifespan, has an inexpensive thermostat that turns on millions of times a year, and getting stuck on is a #1 cause of tank crashes. Because this is the #1 cause of total failure and starting over, if you only hear one thing today, let it be this. Waiting for your heater to hit end of life and completely fail on or off in hopes that you'll catch it in time is the absolute wrong mentality to have here and almost ensures a tank crash at some point. So replacing the heaters before they approach the end of life is an obvious move. Replacing every 12 months will likely avoid experiencing a heater failure for 80% or more of you. Alternatively, using technology like a temperature or full tank controller to instantly catch it will also reduce it by 80% or more. Probably higher in the beginning, but reducing that percentage as the controller and heater age together. So in a 5-year time frame, I'm not convinced that the approach of preempting it or replacing it before it fails versus the technology behind catching it the moment it fails is consistently cheaper or better than the other. However, together they nearly eliminate the #1 cause of tank crashes, failed heaters, from the list of things to think about. I obviously believe in doing both. Replace the heaters and use a controller as budget allows for both. Next component of ideal chemistry is water quality and managing pollutants. Pollutants can come from a wide range of sources. Basically anything we put in the tank, intentionally or unintentionally, foods, low quality additives, salt mixes, media, sources of fresh water, effects of which happen slowly and over many months as they build up. As well as more immediate issues like aerosols used near the tank, anything on your hands when they go in the tank, broken or failing equipment, or pennies that our kids might drop in the tank. There are 2 approaches to this, reactive or proactive. Reactive meaning wait until your fish or coral looks sick, then trying to figure out what it is that's doing it. This requires a keen eye and the type of first-hand experience that produces intuitively accurate guesses. Proactive meaning avoiding a vast majority of this by just assuming some or all of this will happen to your tank over time, which is very likely. An RODI system for your freshwater source, decent salt mix and additive system with minimal impurities, running a small amount of activated carbon for unintended chemicals and yellowing compounds, skimmer and filter socks to avoid excess buildup of phosphate and nitrate, and lastly, 10% weekly water changes, limiting the impact or slow buildup of all kinds of missteps. This proactive approach and these specific steps are absolutely the 80-20 of avoiding the buildup of pollutants in your tank and avoiding a vast majority of challenges altogether, which is 100 times better and more effective than trying to guess at them when the corals or fish are already showing signs of distress. The scope of pollutants is pretty large and worthy of its own episode, so it's going to get a deep dive into each of these topics, the supporting science and whys, starting with the finer details and all the common sources of pollutants. That and all of our Master Reef Tank series on our BRStv channel homepage right here. Decades of hard lessons, experience, and research all on one page.